Welcome, and thank you for joining us today. In just the past few days, America has bid farewell to some truly extraordinary individuals, legends whose influence has shaped our culture, inspired countless lives, and will continue to echo through generations. Today, we pay tribute to their remarkable journeys, celebrate their timeless achievements, and reflect on the legacies they've left behind. If their stories have ever touched your heart, I invite you to honor them by liking this video, a small gesture to help keep their memory alive. Now, let's begin this heartfelt remembrance. Ronnie Rondell Jr., the indomitable stuntman whose fearless artistry helped shape the visual language of Hollywood action for over 50 years, passed away on August 12, 2025, at the age of 88. From the golden age of the 1950s through the early 2000s, Rondell's presence graced more than 500 films and television shows. Though often unseen, his impact was unmistakable, etched into every explosion, every daring leap, every moment of cinematic adrenaline. Audiences may not have known his name, but they felt his work in their bones. Whether it was the rugged landscapes of How the West Was Won, the futuristic tension of Star Trek, First Contact, the gothic grit of The Crow, the high-octane chaos of Speed, or the gravity-defying spectacle of The Matrix Reloaded, Rondell's mastery of motion gave stars their most unforgettable moments. He was the man behind the fall, the fight, the flight executed with precision, grace, and an unwavering commitment to craft. One of his most iconic appearances came not on screen, but in a photograph that became legend, the cover of Pink Floyd's 1975 album Wish You Were Here. In that haunting image, Rondell shook hands with another man while engulfed in flames, a surreal, unforgettable tableau that captured his courage and his devotion to the art of illusion. It was more than a stunt. It was a symbol of sacrifice, a moment of visual poetry that burned itself into rock history. Born on February 10, 1937, in Los Angeles, Rondell began his journey as a gymnast, channeling his physical gifts into acting with an early role in Ma and Pa Kettle at the Fair. But it was in stunt work that he found his true calling, a realm where danger met discipline, and where his quiet bravery earned the admiration of peers and filmmakers alike. In 2004, he was honored with the Taurus World Stunt Award for Lifetime Achievement, a recognition of decades spent defying gravity and expectation. Even after retirement, he remained a legend among colleagues and fans, remembered as the man who made peril look poetic. To audiences, Ronnie Rondell Jr. will forever be the invisible architect of cinema's most thrilling moments, a performer who risked everything so that movie magic could feel real. His legacy continues to blaze across the screen, a testament to the power of movement, mastery, and the unseen heroes who make stories soar. Loni Anderson, the luminous actress whose wit, warmth, and glamour redefined American television, passed away on August 3, 2025, at the age of 79. Best known for her unforgettable portrayal of Jennifer Marlowe on WKRP in Cincinnati, Anderson transformed what could have been a one-dimensional role into a beloved icon of sitcom brilliance. From the show's debut in 1978 to its finale in 1982, Anderson appeared in 88 episodes, embodying the station's receptionist with a dazzling blend of beauty, intelligence, and comedic finesse. Fans adored how Jennifer Marlowe subverted expectations, always the sharpest mind in the room, delivering punchlines with serene confidence and a knowing smile. One fan-favorite storyline saw Jennifer hilariously fend off clueless suitors, turning the tables with grace and humor. These moments weren't just funny, they were empowering, elevating her character beyond stereotype into a symbol of strength and sophistication. Born on August 5, 1945, in St. Paul, Minnesota, Anderson's career extended far beyond WKRP. She starred in numerous TV movies, made memorable guest appearances across network staples, and became a pop culture fixture throughout the 1980s. Her marriage to fellow television star Burt Reynolds kept her in the headlines, but it was her resilience and authenticity as an actress that earned lasting admiration. Anderson's legacy lies in how she reshaped the image of the blonde bombshell, in television comedy. She gave Jennifer Marlowe depth, dignity, and delightful wit, paving the way for countless actresses who followed. Even decades later, reruns continue to spark laughter, and fans still smile at the sparkle she brought to every scene. Much like her character, Loni Anderson will be remembered not only for her beauty, but for the joy, laughter, and intelligence she shared so generously with the world. To honor her elegance and the unforgettable charm she brought to WKRP in Cincinnati, leave a comment with the number 79, her age, or simply write, R.I.P. Loni Anderson, to celebrate a life that lit up screens and hearts alike. Dan Tana, the beloved Serbian-American restaurateur whose West Hollywood eatery became a sanctuary for stars and locals alike, passed away on August 16, 2025, at the age of 91. For over 6 decades, Dan Tana's on Santa Monica Boulevard wasn't just a restaurant. It was Hollywood's living room. From Frank Sinatra and Elizabeth Taylor to Al Pacino and generations of Lakers, the red vinyl booths of Dan Tana's became a crossroads of fame and familiarity. Guests often said the true magic wasn't just in the food. It was in Dan himself, gliding through the dining room with a warm smile, greeting celebrities and strangers as if they were lifelong friends. Born Milivoj Tanasijevic on January 22, 1935, in Belgrade, he lived many lives before becoming a fixture of Los Angeles lore. He played professional soccer in Europe, took small acting roles in films like Kelly's Heroes and The Godfather Part Roman III, and even served as president of the LA Toros during the formative years of the North American Soccer League. Yet it was the atmosphere he created inside his restaurant that became his most enduring legacy, a blend of old-world charm and Hollywood dream. Patrons returned not just for the cuisine, but to relive the moment they spotted their hero across the room or shared a laugh with Dan himself. His presence made people feel seen, welcomed, and part of something timeless. Dan Tana remains unforgettable, not just for what he built, but for how he made people feel. To honor the man whose restaurant became a second home for generations, leave a comment with the number 91, his age, or simply write R.I.P. Dan Tana to celebrate a life of hospitality, warmth, and enduring connection. Tom Lehrer, the brilliant mathematician turned musical satirist who sharpened American wit with his incisive songs, passed away on July 27, 2025, at the age of 97. In the 1950s and 1960s, Lehrer turned piano keys into scalpels, dissecting politics, culture, and morality with a smile, a rhyme, and a fearless sense of humor. From his self-released debut songs by Tom Lehrer in 1953 to the unforgettable That Was the Year That Was in 1965, Lehrer recorded fewer than 40 songs, yet each one struck like lightning. His crisp delivery and deadpan charm made taboo subjects hilarious, unforgettable, and strangely enlightening. One fan-favorite moment came with The Elements, where he sang the periodic table to a Gilbert and Sullivan tune, dazzling scientists and schoolchildren alike. Another came with Poisoning Pigeons in the Park, a gleeful dive into dark absurdity that showcased his unmatched ability to make audiences laugh and wince in equal measure. Born on April 9, 1928 in New York City, Lehrer studied mathematics at Harvard and spent much of his career teaching, retreating from fame as easily as he had entered it. His public output was modest, but his cultural impact was seismic. His satire anticipated a new era of political comedy, influencing everyone from Saturday Night Live writers to modern stand-up icons. Though Lehrer stepped away from performance decades ago, his songs never stopped resonating. His lyrics lived on in classrooms, his records spun on college turntables, and his humor remained astonishingly fresh. His legacy proves that a handful of songs, when crafted with brilliance, can echo across generations. To honor the satirist who taught us to laugh at ourselves with razor-sharp wit and fearless insight, leave a comment with the number 97, his age, or simply write R.I.P. Tom Lehrer to celebrate a life of laughter, intellect, and musical rebellion. Tristan Rogers, the charismatic actor best known for his iconic portrayal of Robert Scorpio on General Hospital, passed away on August 15, 2025, at the age of 78. Joining the ABC soap in 1980, Rogers brought wit, danger, and effortless charm to the screen, transforming Scorpio into one of daytime television's most enduring and beloved characters. From his very first appearance, Robert Scorpio became the suave spy at the heart of General Hospital's most legendary storylines. Rogers infused the role with a magnetic blend of mystery and humanity, captivating audiences and redefining what a soap opera hero could be. Fans especially remember the legendary 1981 Ice Princess saga, where Robert Scorpio joined forces with Luke and Laura to thwart the villainous Miko's Cassadine, a storyline that remains etched in the annals of daytime television as one of its most celebrated arcs. Tristan Rogers, through multiple stints on General Hospital, appeared in over 1,000 episodes, each return greeted with waves of excitement and nostalgia from devoted viewers. His portrayal of Scorpio was a masterclass in balance, sharp humor paired with quiet loyalty, making him a fan favorite for more than 4 decades. Beyond General Hospital, Rogers expanded his soap opera legacy with appearances on The Young and the Restless, and lent his distinctive voice to the animated series All Dogs Go to Heaven too. Yet it was always Scorpio who defined him, the international man of mystery who somehow felt like family to millions watching from their living rooms. Born on June 3, 1946, in Melbourne, Australia, Rogers journeyed to the United States in the 1970s, chasing acting dreams that would lead him to soap stardom. Off-screen, he was known for his generosity and charm at fan conventions, where he shared stories with warmth and wit, proving that the charisma viewers saw on screen was no act. It was who he was. Even decades later, fans continue to revisit Scorpio's greatest moments, the daring rescues, the playful banter, the unwavering loyalty. Tristan Rogers leaves behind a legacy not just measured in episodes, but in memories. For millions who grew up with Robert Scorpio, he will always be the secret agent with a heart, the hero whose adventures made daytime television feel epic, emotional, and unforgettable. To honor Tristan Rogers, who brought Robert Scorpio to life with enduring charm and magnetic presence, leave a comment with the number 78, his age, or simply write R.I.P. Tristan Rogers to celebrate his career, his character, and the legacy he leaves behind in the world of daytime drama. Flaco Jiménez, the legendary accordionist who elevated the sound of Tejano music to global acclaim, passed away on July 31, 2025, at the age of 86. Revered as the king of the accordion, Jiménez transformed a regional tradition into a worldwide phenomenon, making his instrument as iconic in American popular culture as the guitar or piano. From his earliest recordings in the 1950s to Grammy-winning collaborations decades later, Jiménez's career was a tapestry of unforgettable milestones. Fans remember him as the rhythmic heartbeat of the supergroup Texas Tornadoes, where his accordion-powered hits like Hey Baby Que Paso, blending Tejano rhythms with country and rock in a way that made dance floors come alive. He played alongside legends, Bob Dylan, Ry Cooder, the Rolling Stones, yet always carried the unmistakable voice of conjunto music in his hands. His Grammy-winning album Said and Done in San Antonio, named after a song his father wrote, became both a family tribute and a cultural landmark. On stage, Jiménez was a master of joy. His fingers flew across the keys with playful brilliance, each burst of rhythm a celebration. Whether performing in intimate Texas dance halls or international arenas, he radiated warmth and authenticity, a man deeply rooted in tradition, yet endlessly open to sharing it with new audiences. His collaborations crossed borders and genres, proving that the accordion could hold its own in rock, pop, folk, and country. Born March 11, 1939 in San Antonio, Texas, Leonardo Flaco Jiménez came from a musical dynasty. His father, Santiago Jiménez S.R., was a pioneering accordionist, and Flaco carried the torch with innovation and soul. He recorded hundreds of songs, toured the world, and earned 6 Grammy Awards. But what fans cherished most wasn't the accolades. It was the spirit of celebration, resilience, and cultural pride that his music carried. Even now, listeners revisit his recordings not just for the sound, but for the joy they evoke. Flaco Jiménez leaves behind more than a discography. He leaves behind a sound that defined a people, a bridge between cultures, and a legacy of music that will continue to echo wherever conjunto rhythms are played. For millions, he will always be the smiling man with the accordion, the one who made the world dance. Danielle Spencer, the beloved child star who lit up American television screens in the 1970s, passed away on August 11, 2025, at the age of 59. Best known for her role as Dee Thomas on the sitcom What's Happening? Spencer brought sharp wit, sass, and unforgettable charm to a character that quickly became one of the most iconic in family sitcom history. From the show's debut in 1976 until its finale in 1979, Spencer appeared in nearly every episode, stealing scenes with her quick one-liners and deadpan delivery. Fans adored her as the little sister who always had the perfect comeback, holding her own against older characters and often delivering the biggest laughs. One of her most iconic moments came when Dee, arms crossed and eyes rolling, dismissed an adult scolding with a sly remark, an image that still circulates as a meme decades later. These small but powerful performances turned her into a fan favorite, a star who could make audiences laugh with just a look. After the original series ended, Spencer reprised her role in What's Happening Now. In the mid-1980s, giving fans another chance to reconnect with Dee as she navigated young adulthood. While many child stars fade into obscurity, Spencer remained tied to the heart of the series, forever cherished for her ability to embody both humor and honesty. Outside of acting, Spencer pursued a very different calling, becoming a veterinarian and dedicating her life to caring for animals. That second career reflected the same compassion and commitment that endeared her to viewers in childhood. Even as she faced personal challenges, including serious health battles, Spencer remained resilient, open about her struggles, and an inspiration to those who grew up watching her. Born June 24, 1965, in Trenton, New Jersey, she was raised by her mother, actor Juanita Hardy, and found herself in the spotlight at a young age. Though acting was a defining chapter, her later career revealed a woman of depth, determination, and heart. Fans today look back at Spencer's performances not only with nostalgia, but with gratitude for the laughs she gave, the strength she showed, and the legacy she leaves behind. Every rerun of What's Happening brings her back into living rooms, reminding audiences of the little sister with the big voice, the girl who made millions smile, and the woman whose life was lived with spirit and courage. To honor Danielle Spencer, who made Dee Thomas a fan-favorite little sister with sass, warmth, and wit, leave a comment with the number 59, her age, or simply write R.I.P. Danielle Spencer to celebrate her life, her work, and the joy she gave to sitcom fans. Connie Francis, the voice that defined an era of American pop music, passed away on July 17, 2025, at the age of 86. Best known for her string of late 1950s and early 1960s hits, Who's Sorry Now, Stupid Cupid, and Where the Boys Are, Francis became one of the first true female superstars of the rock and roll generation. Her breakthrough came in 1958, when Who's Sorry Now catapulted her from obscurity to stardom almost overnight. The song climbed the charts and earned her a spot on American Bandstand, where her poise and charisma endeared her to a national audience. Soon, Francis was everywhere, her soaring vocals bridging pop, country, and even Italian ballads. Fans remember her unmatched ability to sing with both the sweetness of a ballad and the fire of a rock anthem, giving every lyric emotional weight and timeless appeal. One of her most iconic cultural moments came with the 1960 film Where the Boys Are. Singing its title song, she captured the youthful optimism of a generation on the brink of change. The film and its soundtrack became a defining snapshot of early 60s America, cementing Francis not just as a singer, but as an emblem of her time. Her career wasn't confined to the United States. Fluent in multiple languages, Francis recorded hits in Italian, German, Spanish, and Hebrew, expanding her fan base across the globe. This versatility made her one of the first American artists to achieve true international stardom, blazing a trail for future generations of performers. Born concerto Rosa Maria Francanero on December 12, 1937, in Newark, New Jersey. She was raised in a working-class Italian-American family that nurtured her gift from an early age. Despite personal hardships, including health struggles and profound losses, she never abandoned music. Her story was one of resilience, an artist who continually returned to the stage, determined to give her voice back to the audiences who loved her. Fans today remember Connie Francis not only for the countless records she sold or the chart positions she claimed, but for the way her music became part of life's soundtrack, first loves, heartbreaks, and moments of joy. Her voice was more than melody, it was memory. Each replay of Where the Boys Are, or Who's Sorry Now, brings back more than melody, it resurrects memory. The memory of a young woman who sang with heart, who gave a generation its voice, and whose songs will forever echo as part of America's cultural story. Connie Francis wasn't just a singer, she was a beacon of emotion, a bridge between eras, and a golden voice that defined the soul of American pop. Her music carried the innocence of first love, the ache of heartbreak, and the joy of youth. She sang not just to audiences, but for them, her voice becoming the soundtrack to countless lives. In tribute to Connie Francis, the woman whose timeless classics still stir hearts and summon smiles, leave a comment with the number 86, her age, or simply write R.I.P. Connie Francis to honor her music, her spirit, and the memories she left in song Bobby Whitlock, the soulful voice and masterful keyboardist who helped shape some of rock's most enduring music. Passed away on August 10, 2025, at the age of 77. As a founding member of Derek and the Dominoes, Whitlock's raw, gospel-infused vocals and evocative songwriting left a permanent imprint on rock history. He first rose to prominence in Memphis, where his work with the legendary Stax Records placed him in the orbit of soul greats like Booker T. and the MGs. But it was his partnership with Eric Clapton in the early 1970s that defined his career. On the seminal 1970 album Layla and Other Assorted Love Songs, Whitlock's harmonies and organ lines wove seamlessly with Clapton's guitar, creating a sound of aching beauty and emotional depth. His co-lead vocals on tracks like Bell Bottom Blues and Any Day became fan favorites, proof that his voice could carry both anguish and hope in the same breath. One unforgettable moment came during live performances, where Whitlock's passionate delivery often stole the spotlight. Fans remember him pouring everything into each note, his body moving in rhythm with the keys as if the music itself flowed through him. That authenticity made him not just a sideman, but a true co-architect of the Dominoes sound. Beyond the band, Whitlock pursued a solo career with albums like Bobby Whitlock, 1972, and Raw Velvet, 1972, showcasing his blend of Southern rock, blues, and gospel roots. Though these records didn't reach the commercial heights of his work with Clapton, they revealed a musician deeply committed to honesty and artistry. In later years, he performed intimately with his wife Coco Carmel, where fans could still hear the same fire that lit up his early recordings. Born March 18, 1948, in Memphis, Tennessee, Whitlock's journey was one of persistence and passion. From humble beginnings to the global stage, he carried the sound of the South into the heart of rock and roll, forever shaping its direction. Fans today remember Bobby Whitlock not only for his place beside Clapton, but for the heart he poured into every lyric and every chord. His voice was never just background. It was a cry, a prayer, a celebration of music itself. Every time Layla plays or his harmonies rise in Bell Bottom Blues, listeners are reminded of a man whose soul lived inside the music and whose legacy continues to move generations. Sheila Jordan, the bebop-rooted vocalist celebrated for turning jazz into an intimate act of storytelling, passed away on August 11, 2025, at the age of 96. Known for her daring phrasing, feather-light tone, and fearless improvisation, Jordan transformed every performance into a conversation, half song, half confession, that drew listeners close. She first gained attention in the 1950s, studying with Lenny Tristano and carving a singular path in a scene dominated by instrumentalists. But it was her Blue Note debut portrait of Sheila, 1962, that placed her firmly in the history books. Critics hailed the album as a revelation. Here was a singer who didn't just interpret standards, she reimagined them, bending melody and lyric into something fresh, personal, and unrepeatable. Audiences never forgot the first time they heard her duet with a bassist, an innovation she pioneered. Stripped of piano or drums, Jordan let her voice dance against the strings, creating performances that were raw, swinging, and startlingly honest. For many fans, those voice and bass sets became her signature, a reminder that intimacy could be just as powerful as volume. Her story was one of resilience. Born Sheila Jeanette Dawson on November 18, 1928, in Detroit, she grew up in poverty and discovered jazz through Charlie Parker Records. She often recalled sneaking into clubs just to be near the music that gave her life direction. In New York, she balanced single motherhood and day jobs while refusing to give up her art. Though mainstream fame eluded her, within jazz circles, she became a revered figure, admired for her integrity as much as her artistry. Over the decades, Jordan taught countless students, insisting that singing jazz meant telling the truth. Honors followed, including an NEA Jazz Masters Fellowship in 2012, and tributes from generations of musicians. But perhaps her greatest reward was the loyalty of fans who felt she was singing directly to them. Even in her 90s, she continued to perform with the same daring spirit, proving that jazz was not a relic, but a living, breathing conversation. To hear Sheila Jordan was to feel as though the music itself was whispering secrets in your ear. Her legacy endures in every young vocalist who dares to strip a song bare, searching not for polish but for truth. Clint Eastwood was not merely born into America's Great Depression. He emerged from it as one of the nation's most enduring storytellers, a figure whose presence has become inseparable from the very language of modern cinema. From his earliest steps on San Francisco soil in 1930 to the sound stages of Hollywood and the quiet coastal ranch he still calls home, Eastwood's life has unfolded like one of his widescreen epics, Stark Beginnings, a relentless journey through uncertainty, and the creation of a legacy that towers across generations. For more than 7 decades, his career has carved an indelible path through film history. As an actor, he gave the world archetypes that endure in the cultural bloodstream: the nameless drifter framed against Leone's burning skies, and the uncompromising detective whose simple challenge, "Go ahead, make my day," became a shorthand for unflinching resolve. As a director, he proved that restraint could be radical, shaping films where silence thundered louder than words, and where morality was never painted in black and white, but in shades of human struggle. Yet Eastwood's legacy cannot be measured by characters alone. It lives in the ethos he carried from Depression-era scarcity: respect for the audience, discipline on set, efficiency without waste, and the belief that truth, whether in a glance, a line of dialogue, or a single chord on the piano, should never be compromised. His Malpaso productions redefined independence in Hollywood. His films reshaped genres from westerns to war dramas, and his influence echoes in classrooms, sound stages, and the work of younger filmmakers who credit him as a quiet mentor. Today, approaching a century of life, Eastwood stands not only as an artist, but as a cultural compass. His legacy is at once cinematic and human, a body of work that maps America's conscience and a personal philosophy that insists endurance, curiosity, and integrity can outlast applause. To speak of Clint Eastwood is to speak of a man who transformed hardship into art, silence into myth, and a restless journey into one of the most remarkable legacies in the history of film. The boy learned early to travel light. Towns changed, jobs dried up, and classrooms blurred like mile markers in the rearview. Each new school meant a new map of faces and a fresh calculus of belonging. Clint took the back row by instinct, speaking little, listening long, letting other people's rhythms reveal themselves before he offered his own. Silence became a kind of shelter and then a tool. In that hush, he studied how teachers held a room, how tempers rose and fell, how a single glance could say more than a speech. When the walls pressed in, thin plaster, noisier neighbors, doors that never quite shut, he stepped outside. The Pacific gave him room to breathe. The wind off the water taught him what endurance sounds like. He measured afternoons by the drift of fog and the slow burn of sunset. Redwood groves and two-lane highways widened his inner frame. The horizon itself suggested a grammar, foreground, distance, consequence. Nature was not escape so much as apprenticeship. If you watched long enough, you learned where to place your focus. Saturday matinees offered another classroom. In the dim of nickel theaters, John Ford's riders cut silhouettes against heat-bleached skies. They didn't explain themselves. They earned understanding by what they did and what they refused to do. The camera held. The world breathed. The audience leaned in. The same rule soon guided everything else. Show up, keep your hands steady, let the work speak first. Odd jobs became the forge of discipline, bagging groceries to stretch the week's fuel, pumping gas with a nod and a thank you, hauling lumber until the palms burned raw. From each shift, Clint Eastwood carried away a quiet creed that would later define his film sets: arrive before dawn, waste nothing, trust the first honest take. The hardships of a roving childhood did not embitter him, they calibrated him. Moving taught him to observe. Noise taught him to value quiet. Want taught him the price of excess. By the time the family's tires found temporary rest, the outlines of a life were already drawn. He would be a man who listens before he speaks, who prefers open air to crowded rooms, who believes that craft is a covenant and economy a kind of grace. Years before Hollywood, Clint Eastwood had already chosen his instruments, the horizon as teacher, the wrench as tutor, and silence as language. At Oakland Technical High School, Eastwood's frame was already remarkable, 6'4", of quiet presence, a silhouette that drew glances but never sought the spotlight. While classmates filled bleachers at pep rallies and chased applause on stage, Clint gravitated to the edges of the room, the quiet corners where observation was easier than performance. He carried himself not as the star of the scene, but as the boy studying its angles, already practicing the art of watching more than speaking. Outside the classroom, work came early and often. He shouldered crates in storerooms, bagged groceries for neighbors who measured every dime, and pumped gas with a polite nod. These shifts were not glamorous, but they taught him something more enduring than pocket money, rhythm, responsibility, the necessity of showing up. The lessons of labor etched themselves into him, reinforcing the Depression-era ethic he had inherited at birth. Waste nothing, give effort freely, and let others see you by what you do, not what you say. In the school's industrial arts program, Clint discovered a language that resonated with his nature. Engines, unlike people, were honest. A stripped thread told you exactly where you had rushed. A misaligned gear revealed impatience. A smooth ignition rewarded discipline. He took to rebuilding a battered Model T, coaxing life back into a machine long written off. Each stubborn bolt, each greasy night under the hood demanded patience and precision. Where others might curse, Clint simply worked slower, steadier, until the parts clicked into harmony. What seemed like a boy's tinkering was, in truth, rehearsal for a future craft. The patience learned from turning wrenches would one day serve him in editing bays, where trimming a frame too quickly could strip the meaning from a scene. The quiet focus required to restore an engine mirrored the restraint he would later bring to filmmaking, removing the unnecessary, trusting the essentials. In those formative years, Clint was not yet an actor or director. He was simply a young man learning that strength is not found in standing at the center of attention, but in the ability to work steadily in the shadows, shaping something lasting with his own hands. The Korean War years found Clint Eastwood in uniform, though not on foreign battlefields. Stationed at Fort Ord along California's fog-swept coast, he served as a lifeguard, scanning the surf for trainees pulled under by ripped tides. It was a job that demanded vigilance and discipline, the kind of watchfulness he had honed since childhood. Eyes fixed, voice economical, actions measured only when absolutely necessary. The endless rhythm of waves against the shore became its own drill, patience, endurance, readiness. But fate tested him more directly in 1951. Catching a ride aboard a Navy bomber, Clint found himself high above the Pacific when fuel ran low and instruments faltered. The plane ditched into the cold sea near Point Reyes, breaking apart on impact. In that moment, there were no cameras, no scripts, only instinct. Eastwood swam through the dark surf for hours, pushing against tides that dragged him toward exhaustion. Each stroke was a wager with mortality, a lesson that survival is earned not by luck, but by refusing to surrender. By the time he staggered onto shore, shivering and salt-stung, the ordeal had etched itself into him as a private covenant. Endurance must always outrun chance. Comrades noticed a new weight in his presence after that night. His stare, already calm and cautious, seemed to hold a deeper steadiness, an unspoken knowledge that life can fracture without warning. That same gaze would later become a cinematic signature, a silence that carried gravity. Evenings at Fort Ord brought another kind of discipline. In the barracks, Eastwood filled notebooks with fragmentary stories and rough sketches of scenes. A man alone on a dusty road, a horizon stretching beyond the frame, a pause where dialogue might have been. They were crude, half-formed, but they marked the beginning of something larger. The soldier who repaired engines by day and saved swimmers from the undertow by afternoon was quietly rehearsing another craft at night, the shaping of images, the building of myth. In uniform, Clint Eastwood had not yet set foot in Hollywood, but he had already encountered the twin forces that would define his art. The stern training of discipline and the life-altering brush with death that proved endurance, not chance, is what carries a man to shore. Hollywood did not welcome Clint Eastwood with open arms. His entry into the business was almost accidental. A fellow serviceman at Fort Ord introduced him to a universal talent scout, and soon after, he found himself under the harsh lights of a screen test. The studio executives were impressed by his height, the sculpted jawline, the camera-ready figure. But when he opened his mouth, their judgment was swift, the voice too quiet, the delivery too stiff, the acting unrefined. In a town that measured men by polish and charm, Eastwood seemed rough timber. For many, that dismissal would have been the end. For Eastwood, it was only another obstacle to be met with work. He enrolled in acting classes, studying the Stanislavski method at night while repairing swimming pools, pumping gas, or stacking boxes by day. He observed actors the way he once studied mechanics, taking them apart in his mind, examining why a gesture rang false or why a pause carried truth. He listened more than he spoke, just as he had in countless classrooms before, waiting for the moment when silence itself could be turned into a tool of presence. The years of odd jobs, of disappointment and persistence, hardened him into someone who no longer expected easy breaks. Yet perseverance has always paid its dividend. In 1959, CBS offered him a role in a new television western, Rawhide. Eastwood would play Rowdy Yates, the affable young trail boss tasked with driving cattle across a rugged frontier. It was not the kind of part that promised glory. It was steady work, reliable exposure, and a chance to learn on set. But for Clint, it was also oxygen. For 8 seasons, Rawhide entered American living rooms, its wide skies and cattle drives carried by the earnest presence of the lanky young cowboy. Eastwood, who once preferred shadows to spotlights, now found his face beamed weekly into millions of households. The show made him a household name, though the role itself, clean-cut, boyish, almost too wholesome, felt increasingly like a costume he had outgrown. Behind the smile and good manners of Rowdy Yates lingered a deeper hunger, to inhabit characters as complex and contradictory as the people he had watched his entire life. What the audience saw was a star being born. What Eastwood felt was the restlessness of an actor who knew he was meant for darker horizons. Rawhide gave him stability, visibility, and craft, but it also gave him the certainty that he could not remain confined within the frame others built for him. For Clint Eastwood, this was not the destination. It was the proving ground, the first true act of a man destined to rewrite the script of American cinema. When Rawhide finally ran its course, Clint Eastwood stood at a crossroads. Television had given him recognition, but the image of Rowdy Yates, good-natured, clean-cut, predictable, felt like a box too small for the man who preferred silence to chatter and shadows to easy smiles. Then came an offer from a little-known Italian director named Sergio Leone, who was assembling a low-budget Western to be shot in Spain. What he needed was an American face, unknown enough to be believable, but strong enough to anchor the story. Eastwood saw a door opening onto darker terrain and walked through without hesitation. What emerged was a fistful of dollars, 1964, and with it, a reinvention of the Western archetype. Leone stripped the genre of its moral polish and handed Eastwood a poncho, a battered hat, and a fistful of silence. The character was simply called the Man with No Name, a drifter whose intentions were as unreadable as his gaze. Dialogue became almost unnecessary. Eastwood's squint, the slow tilt of his head, the curl of smoke from a cigarillo, these gestures carried more weight than speeches ever could. His stillness didn't just command attention, it invited projection. Audiences poured their own fears and fascinations into the void he created, transforming absence into myth. Leone's camera lingered on faces, sweat, and dust, while Ennio Morricone's haunting score, whistles, gunshots, and church bells woven into melody, elevated the films into operatic spectacle. Together, director, composer, and actor forged a cinematic language where silence thundered louder than words, where violence unfolded like ritual, and where morality was not preached but left for the audience to wrestle with. The success was immediate and seismic. For a few dollars more deepened the myth, pairing Eastwood with Lee Van Cleef in duels that felt more like moral reckonings than gunfights. By the time the good, the bad, and the ugly erupted across screens in 1966, the trilogy had shattered conventions and ignited a global phenomenon. What began as a gamble on an unknown American actor became one of cinema's most enduring revolutions. When Clint Eastwood returned to the United States, he was no longer the amiable trail boss from television. He was an international star whose silence spoke across continents, a man who had transformed the cowboy from wholesome hero into ambiguous legend. The Dollars trilogy had done more than elevate his career. It had given him the creative leverage to shape it. From then on, Eastwood would not simply act in other men's stories. He would begin to claim the power to tell his own. By the early 1970s, Clint Eastwood was no longer just a star. He was a figure audiences watched for definition in uncertain times. That definition arrived in 1971, when he stepped into the shoes of Inspector Harry Callahan, a San Francisco cop with a .44 Magnum and a moral compass, as unyielding as the city's granite hills. Dirty Harry, directed by Don Siegel, was more than a crime thriller. It was a provocation. Callahan bypassed bureaucrats, bent rules, and asked a question that unsettled the era in a world unraveling: does justice come from institutions, or from the lone individual willing to act when others hesitate? The film polarized critics. To some, Harry was a dangerous emblem of vigilante excess, a blunt force response to rising crime and social upheaval. To others, he was a necessary counterweight, a man who cut through red tape and stood his ground when chaos threatened to drown order. For audiences, the verdict was clear. Harry Callahan became an instant icon. His squint and steely line, "Do you feel lucky, punk?" entered the cultural bloodstream as shorthand for defiance. In the years that followed, Eastwood showed a remarkable ability to balance commerce with experiment. He wrestled orangutans in the wildly successful comedy Every Which Way But Loose, then turned around and played a wounded Union soldier in the unsettling Southern Gothic, The Beguiled. Each choice expanded his range while reinforcing his status as a box office force. He refused to be cornered. One project would satisfy millions. The next would challenge them. The Dirty Harry sequels, stretching through the 1970s and into the 1980s, tracked not only the characters' battles but also the shifting anxieties of urban America. Each installment confronted new fears: terrorism, corruption, moral ambiguity. While Eastwood's portrayal held steady as the anchor, Harry Callahan became less a man than a mirror, reflecting the nation's unease, its craving for strength, its mistrust of authority, and its fascination with the individual who stands alone against the tide. By the close of the 1980s, Clint Eastwood was no longer just an actor who played tough men. He had become the embodiment of rugged individualism itself. Through Dirty Harry and its cultural aftershocks, he turned controversy into legend and carved his place as one of the defining figures of American cinema in the late 20th century. By the late 1960s, Clint Eastwood had learned a truth that many actors spend their whole careers ignoring. In Hollywood, power belongs not to those who stand in front of the camera, but to those who control what happens behind it. Determined never again to be a hired hand in someone else's vision, he founded Malpaso Productions in 1967, naming the company after a rugged creek near his adopted home of Carmel. The word Malpaso means bad step in Spanish, a wry nod to those who warned him that producing his own films would be a financial misstep. For Eastwood, it became the very foundation of his independence. Malpaso was not built on grandeur, but on efficiency. Eastwood insisted on compact crews, short shooting schedules, and budgets that respected every dollar. There would be no indulgent reshoots, no endless tinkering, no excess for the sake of ego. He believed a film set should run like a jazz quartet rather than a marching band, each member trusted, each contribution essential, the rhythm lean and alive. Profits were shared. Risks were balanced. Control remained firmly in the hands of those who did the work. This philosophy did more than protect his films. It reshaped the way Hollywood looked at the economics of creativity. At a time when studios were bloated with overhead and executives obsessed with surveys and formulas, Eastwood quietly proved that artistry and prudence could coexist. Malpaso's track record of consistent profitability gave him the freedom to pursue riskier stories, from revisionist westerns that questioned violence itself to intimate character dramas others deemed unmarketable. Generations of filmmakers have cited Malpaso as a model. Keep the team small, keep the budgets honest, protect your final cut like family. What began as one man's refusal to surrender control became a blueprint for creative autonomy in an industry notorious for eroding it. In founding Malpaso Productions, Clint Eastwood did not just secure his own independence. He lit a path for others, showing that integrity and efficiency, when fused together, could sustain both art and artist across decades. By the time Clint Eastwood fully stepped behind the camera, his method was already written in the marrow of his life. He distrusted waste of money, of time, of words. On his sets, there were no theatrics of authority, no endless rehearsals that drained the vitality from a scene. Instead, he moved with the same economy he once learned while rebuilding a battered Model T: touch lightly, act decisively, trust the material. He rarely called for more than 2 takes, believing that the first spark of spontaneity was worth more than a dozen polished repetitions. If an actor faltered, he encouraged honesty over perfection. "Let it breathe," he would say, and the camera, as disciplined as its director, would quietly bear witness. His aesthetic was equally spare: natural light whenever possible, practical settings, uncluttered frames, long silences left intact as if the pauses themselves were dialogue. Where other filmmakers gilded their images with spectacle, Eastwood stripped his to essentials, letting the truth emerge in what was unsaid. He understood that in cinema, as in life, restraint could thunder louder than excess. That creed found its ultimate expression in Unforgiven, 1992. The film was at once a Western and an anti-Western, a story about violence that dared to ask what violence truly leaves behind. Eastwood, directing and starring, inhabited William Money, a retired gunslinger drawn back into brutality he no longer believed in. The film's landscapes were harsh, its gunfights stripped of glamour, its silences heavy with regret. When the story climaxed, it was not triumph but reckoning, not glory but grief. The world recognized its power. Unforgiven earned 4 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Director, an honor that vindicated Eastwood's decades of quiet discipline after years of being dismissed by critics as a drive-in cowboy. But for him, the accolades mattered less than the process. He credited his cast, his crew, and even the ghost of Sergio Leone, whose voice he admitted still whispered to him, "Hold the shot 1 beat longer." On set, the rhythm of Eastwood's work had become legendary. He arrived before dawn, often with a pocket Leica to map his shots before the crew assembled. He preferred to let rehearsals double as takes, capturing the rawness of a first attempt. He moved his team with a cadence closer to music than mechanics, pausing where tension needed to gather, releasing when emotion required space. Actors trusted him because he trusted them, allowing performances to unfold without interruption. Unforgiven did more than crown Eastwood with Oscars. It crystallized his philosophy for a generation of filmmakers. He showed that discipline is not coldness, that silence is not absence, and that economy, when married to vision, can yield work of devastating humanity. From that moment forward, Clint Eastwood was no longer merely a star who had learned to direct. He was a master craftsman, a filmmaker who had proven that the leanest tools in the right hands could carve the deepest truths. These works revealed Clint Eastwood not as a relic, but as a master of moral complexity, a filmmaker unafraid to show that truth is rarely simple and justice never free of cost. His momentum only grew. Gran Torino, 2008, turned a grizzled veteran into a reluctant bridge between generations and cultures, its themes of prejudice and redemption striking a deep chord worldwide. American Sniper, 2014, dissected modern warfare's unseen toll, igniting fierce debate while becoming one of the most profitable war films ever made. Each project was both a story and a national mirror, drawing audiences into uncomfortable but necessary conversations. Even as the industry shifted, Eastwood remained unwavering in method. He adopted drones, LED volume stages, and digital tools, not out of novelty, but utility. If technology served the story, he welcomed it. If not, he trusted his eye, his instinct, and the rhythm of his sets. On Juror 2, 2024, a courtroom drama confronting conscience in a media-driven age, he demonstrated once more that efficiency and authenticity were the twin rails of his art. The measure of these decades is not found solely in accolades or box office, but in endurance. At an age when most legends rest on their laurels, Eastwood pressed forward, proving that curiosity and discipline keep an artist young. His late career did not merely extend a legacy, it redefined it, reminding the world that the horizon still belongs to those willing to keep moving toward it. For Clint Eastwood, music is not decoration, it is conversation. Long after the crew has wrapped and the set has gone quiet, he will sit at a piano and tease out a few spare notes, a motif so simple it barely announces itself. No grand overture, no orchestral thunder, just a line in a minor key, repeating with small variations the way a thought returns when the room is dark. He favors understatement over spectacle, trusting ears the way he trusts eyes. If you give them space, they lean in. From those late-night sketches, he invites orchestrators the way a bandleader assembles a jazz combo. The brief is never to enlarge for grandeur's sake, but to let the melody breathe, to keep air between phrases, to protect silence as if it were another instrument. A brushed cymbal may answer a piano question. A lone cello might shadow a character's doubt. Harmony arrives in half steps like footsteps down a corridor. Nothing shouts, nothing insists. The music listens to the scene and speaks only when spoken to. This ethos rejects the tyranny of wall-to-wall scoring. Eastwood prefers the honest sound of a room, wind against a window, a voice catching mid-sentence, then places music where emotion asks for a hand, not a harness. His cues rise beneath a moment the way tide rises beneath a skiff, lifting without tipping. In a gunman's pause, the motif is a pulse. In a mother's loss, it's a breath she cannot take. Where others hammer at feeling, his themes suggest, invite, and release. Recording sessions feel less like command performances than hushed conversations. He sits among players, humming a figure, tapping time with a knuckle, asking for restraint where habit would chase crescendo. The result is a grammar of trust. The picture trusts the music trusts the silence. Across decades, these scores have become a signature as distinct as his squint, quiet questions that travel farther than loud answers. They remind filmmakers and audiences alike that, in the right hands, a melody can carry truth, and that sometimes the truest note is the one you leave unplayed. At an age when most men have long surrendered to frailty, Clint Eastwood continues to rise each morning with the discipline of a craftsman and the curiosity of a student. His days are not governed by nostalgia or indulgence, but by rhythm, carefully measured, purposeful, and as lean as his films. Dawn finds him awake before the sun, boiling a single egg, pairing it with fruit, yogurt, and black coffee. No sugar, no pastries. Fuel, not excess. It is a depression child's breakfast carried into a director's 9th decade. Movement follows, a long walk along the Carmel shoreline, where the Pacific surf sets the metronome for thoughts still assembling into scenes. Some mornings he trades the walk for golf, a sport he approaches less as leisure than meditation. Every swing an exercise in control, every step across the fairway a small rehearsal for stamina. In his home gym, he favors light weights and pilates stretches, preserving flexibility over brute strength, ensuring his frame remains lithe enough for the work still ahead. The wear of a lifetime in front of cameras and atop horses has left its marks. Tinnitus echoes from decades of blank gunfire on sound stages. His knees bear cartilage tears earned from countless stunts. A bout of pneumonia in his late 80s left his lungs vulnerable. Yet Eastwood resists surgical shortcuts. He chooses instead the slower path: physical therapy, pool laps, quiet persistence. Healing, like filmmaking, is a matter of patience. By mid-morning, he is at work. Script pages spread across a desk, penciled shot lists drafted on yellow pads, calls made to crew members already struggling to match his pace. Afternoons belong to pre-production meetings or editing sessions, where he moves with the same economy he demands on set. No wasted time, no wasted words. Evenings are given to music. At his Steinway, he coaxes simple motifs that may one day underscore a film, or remain private meditations, notes unplayed beyond the walls of his study. Night arrives with the same discipline as dawn. He eats early, rests early, and guards his sleep as he does his craft. Each day repeats like a well-edited sequence, spare, deliberate, alive with intention. At 90+, Clint Eastwood is not sustained by luck, but by a lifelong covenant with discipline, to keep moving, to respect the body, and to honor each hour as if it were another scene in a film that has not yet reached its final act. Clint Eastwood's long life has been marked by absence as much as achievement. The sudden death of his father in 1990 cast a shadow over Unforgiven, deepening its meditation on mortality. The loss of Sergio Leone, the mentor whose voice still urged him to hold a shot longer, left a creative silence. Actress and longtime partner Sandra Locke passed in 2018, and in 2024, his companion Christina Sandera died unexpectedly, leaving him quietly heartbroken. Even the passing of colleagues like Gene Hackman reminded him that his address book had become a memorial. Each loss did not break him, but seeped into his films, giving them the weight of lived sorrow. His family life has been equally complex, a wide clan with children from different relationships, some acknowledged late. Yet he gathered them without spectacle, creating a tribe bound by responsibility rather than image. At Mission Ranch, holidays still draw them together, where grandchildren's laughter mingles with stories of film sets. For Eastwood, legacy within family means presence, not publicity. As a citizen, he embraced pragmatism. In 1986, he served as mayor of Carmel by the Sea, cutting through bureaucracy and preserving the town's character. His 2012 empty chair speech at the Republican convention, ridiculed by some, defended by others, reflected his refusal to rehearse or polish. Politically, he has remained independent, backing people over ideology. Outside the spotlight, his contributions are quieter. He protected acres of California coastline, restored Mission Ranch, developed Tejano Golf Club with an eye for stewardship, and joined efforts to preserve Pebble Beach. His foundation has funded scholarships, conservation, and medical help for crew members, often anonymously. For Eastwood, generosity is not performance, but duty. Through loss, family, politics, and service, he has lived by a simple creed: respect what endures, avoid waste, and measure a man by the responsibilities he carries, not the applause he receives. Few figures in cinema have crossed so completely from screen into symbol as Clint Eastwood. His silhouette, poncho slung, eyes narrowed, A cigarillo glowing at the corner of his mouth has become as recognizable as any icon in American history. His words, too, have outlived their scripts. "Go ahead, make my day." "You feel lucky, punk?" These phrases no longer belong only to the films that birthed them. They echo in political speeches, sitcom parodies, rap lyrics, and everyday conversations. They are shorthand for defiance, for self-possession, for the courage to stand one man against the world. The archetype Eastwood helped forge has seeped into culture in ways few actors could have imagined. Toy makers sculpt action figures in his likeness. Fashion brands borrow his poncho silhouette for modern streetwear. Video games replicate his squint and quick-draw stance as signals of unshakable cool. Across social media, GIF loops of his silent stare and slow, deliberate gestures circulate as reaction shorthand for skepticism or quiet authority. Mentorship, unexpected phone calls, quiet invitations to observe his sets, even the discreet loan of camera packages to filmmakers struggling to secure resources. In these gestures, Clint Eastwood has ensured that his legacy is not confined to his own work, but passed forward as guidance, as generosity, as quiet belief in others. His filmography resembles an atlas of the American psyche. From the barren landscapes of Unforgiven to the fractured city streets of Mystic River, from the wartime empathy of Letters from Iwo Jima to the generational tensions of Gran Torino, Eastwood has traced the contours of a nation wrestling with violence, responsibility, and conscience. Time and again, his characters face institutions that falter, systems that fail. And he asks, without speeches or slogans, what a single person must do when left alone before injustice. His answer has never been bravado, but a quieter creed: endure, act, and let silence carry its own authority. As he looks back across nearly a century, Eastwood distills his philosophy with the same restraint that has marked his art: stay lean, stay curious, trust your instincts, honor your team, ride toward the next horizon. It is the ethos of a man who began life amid Depression-era scarcity and who has never abandoned its lessons. In his films, in his music, and in his daily discipline, he remains the lone rider shrinking against an endless sky, moving forward not for applause, but because forward is the only direction worth traveling. And when history finally calls cut, Clint Eastwood's legacy will not be a monument of marble or a statue in bronze. It will be a trail of finished stories, of younger filmmakers he inspired, of audiences who left theaters a little braver than when they entered. His lasting gift is motion itself, the reminder that character is forged where comfort surrenders to courage, and that even the simplest words, "that'll do," can echo louder than gunfire across time.